Welcome back to GSD Fails. This is episode number 3. Gosh, it took us a long time to get to 3, man. Life gets busy. What the heck?
No.
But our first 2 were awesome. And we got a lot of really good feedback. And in fact, it took us so long to get to the next one that people started hitting me up and saying, Tim, are you guys still doing it? Yeah, we're totally doing it. Just life got busy. But let me give you a quick recap in case you're not familiar with GSD Fails. Sometimes we fail in life, and sometimes life becomes an epic fail. But people can rise to become something new, someone better than they could have been without the fail. And GSD Fails is a series of conversations to explore resiliency in the face of adversity. And so we're talking to people who have been transformed by their experiences, transformed by their fail. And that's really the key to these talks, is overcoming adversity in a way that makes you better. And today we're gonna hear a story from our very own GSD crew, John Harris.
Yeah, guys. So I'm really passionate about this subject, and I think as I look back over not just my professional life, which is what we're going to talk about today, but just like my life in general, I really think that your challenges and failures create you, right there. And I kind of believe in this Stoic philosophy, of the obstacle is the way, and leaning into the toughest thing to create the best version of you. At nearly 40, that's clear to me, but in my early and mid 20s, it wasn't. And what I'm going to talk about today is really that first professional failure, leadership failure that I had, and kind of how that grew me as a person, as a leader, and really professionally. So when I graduated from college, my first gig that I got was with a security services, guard services contracting company. And my job was as an administrator, training, leader, doing a lot with the officers. I wasn't an officer myself, and also kind of an exec admin for the director. So I got a lot of personal FaceTime with the senior leadership. I did a great job, and expectations were low. So being great when people don't expect a lot out of you was beneficial for my situation. And so when there was a leadership change and the manager position opened up for this entire account, I basically said, hey, talk them into giving me a shot. And they did, took a chance on me, and I blew it. I blew it big time. I didn't change anything about the way I approached the position. So I had a lot of personal relationships with the security officers because we were more at a peer level. Became a manager, didn't change that. I didn't really figure out that adjustment has to take place. And looking back almost, 15 years later, that's all really clear now. That when you move up to positions, you got to adjust and things change. And so also my relationship with the security director changed drastically, because now I was responsible for the organization's performance to her. I wasn't just a supporting administrator to her. And so I couldn't understand, all of a sudden, overnight, I was like, why doesn't she like me anymore? Right? So there's all these things. And a lot of it was just victim mentality. I can remember myself getting so frustrated and kind of pointing the finger at everybody else, but me. And so ultimately, I was demoted to a smaller role and put down and still in a leadership position, but much smaller, going from the biggest operation to one of the smallest. And I remember specifically thinking to myself at that point, I have 2 options here. Either I use this as an opportunity to get better and I make the best out of it and I learn from it, or I don't, and I'm going to be gone in weeks. And I had a young family. And I couldn't afford to do that, both personally, professionally. That wasn't an option. So it was learn and grow. And so that's what I did. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And ultimately I would prove myself over time, get put back up into that leadership role when the person they had brought in to take over for me did not do very well. And I learned and I grew and I watched and I really took advantage of the opportunity and learned how to be a good person leader, learned how to learn. Also at the same time was getting a lot of clarity around my personal life. So I had been struggling. That whole victimhood was also, I would say, compounded by unhealthy habits, alcoholism, a lot of other stuff. And so as I got clarity in my professional life, I got clarity in my personal life. And the two things were very much, yin and yang. And I also at the same time decided for some reason I was going to run a marathon. And so kind of layered that all together. And it was just this amazing personal and professional transformation that all happened to happen at the same time. But it was, I look back and it was like, this almost like Phoenix rising, Lee, like that thing you posted the other day. I'm like, yeah, that's how it felt, right? Going through that transformation because the marathon training, I gained like 50 pounds, lost it all. Life got very healthy, personal life got great. And then professionally, within, a year, I'm kind of back where I was. And then within a couple of months, I was off to a new role. And then kind of it all just zoomed from there. And so yeah, I've had like, that's the one that sticks out to me as like that Genesis moment. But I've had multiple failures since then. In every role I've been in this role that I'm in now, right? I've like stubbed my toe and, the bigger your roles get, the bigger I think your opportunities for failure become, but also your opportunity for learning, I think becomes significant. And I always use that as a story, especially to young leaders that I'm working with. I had, maybe a year later, one of my supervisors got promoted, didn't do well. We had to de-scope his role, put him into another position. And I told him, I go, look, I went through the same thing. I'm telling from a place of experience, this has happened to me. You have this option or this option, which one are you going to take? Well, he took the other route and he was gone within a month because he couldn't let his ego get out of his way, right? He took it too personal instead of taking it as an opportunity for growth.
There's some very bold and powerful statements, messages that you've shared with us. And I was writing them down as you were saying them. Yeah. One of the first things that you said was you thought that you blew your chance. So can you share a little bit more on why that you thought that you blew your chance?
Yeah, I think especially when you're younger or early in role, there's not a lot of trust built up. And so you don't know how many shots you're going to get. I mean, now I'm pretty confident that if I, make a mistake, even with the organization that I'm in, if you had positive intent and you were doing the right things, failure is not forever. But at that time, I don't think I understood that. So I was worried that like, this is it. And if I don't do it here, I'm done. Right. Which in reflection makes totally no sense. But you can see how if you don't have somebody speaking to you and helping you and coaching you and letting you know that as long as you have positive intent and you're focused towards, a true north that's good, like you're going to get a pretty unlimited opportunities. They might not be all the opportunities you love. You might have to go be a security officer. You might have to go be an Uber driver. You might have to go do whatever, right? But the opportunities are always going to be there. I didn't really know that yet. I didn't have that vision. So, and I felt like, oh man, I had my chance. This is it. This was the big show. Because that's how we talked about it, right? Like us as an organization, we talked about this one of all like the 8 operations that we had security folks at. This was the big job. And if you get this job, then you made it. And I didn't know really anything about the security industry outside of that world either. So it wasn't like I knew it was this grandiose thing and I could go down the street and work for all the other companies and do other things. You didn't know that yet.
You also used becoming a victim and victimhood too.
Yeah.
And I think it's important the way that you flip that around, and then you talked about the growth within failure. Do you want to share with the audience what you mean from that and like being a victim but then it being a great positive moment because you grew from it. You want to share some more?
Absolutely. So what's funny is that I'm like a just avid reader now. I never really liked to read until maybe the last like 5 or 7 years where I really got into just consuming knowledge. And I read a lot of like, leadership development and personal development and things of that nature. And recently I've been reading a lot of Napoleon Hill and kind of that grouping of thought perspective. And it's funny because all it's doing is really crystallizing what I already found out through these experiences. And the most recent way that it's been kind of visually articulated, which I really like, is the window and the mirror. And so, and I think this is from Jim Collins when he talks to Good to Great in the book Good to Great. So he refers to it as level 5 leader. You look out the window, and when you look out the window, that's where all the when things are going good, you say, why is it going good? It's everything out the window. And why are things going bad? You're looking in the mirror. And meaning that, you give the goodness away and you take responsibility. Extreme Ownership is another great book, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, some former SEALs that kind of live that concept. That I read that a number of years ago, and that also was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about, like accountability. And so before I really knew that I own all my own actions, and that really I'm in control of the way I perceive anything. Meaning like, there's a sphere of control that I can have influence on and can't, but I can control the way I react to anything. So I'll give you an example. That security director, she was mean and pissed off. Like, I couldn't do anything about it. So why let it ruin my day? Like, I still got a job to do. And so once I kind of realized, like, why am I letting all this stuff make me unhappy and make me feel bad about me, and like letting it into me, that was life-changing. Because then I realized, like, I need to look at what I can control and just create a bright, positive light and push out and influence in a good way. Because that's really what I can do. Yeah, then I stopped being a victim of other people's kind of negative vibes on me.
Okay.
And that was a big change.
Yeah, we can only manage whatever's in front of us, right? And we can't manage other people's feelings or personalities. Talking about Navy SEALs and military people, they talk a lot about discipline, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe if you look back at it, you would have probably said to yourself, if I had been a bit more disciplined in the way that I approach things, then I wouldn't have allowed these negative elements to steer me away from the direction that I needed to be going on, right?
Yeah, I think, installing, positive rituals and habits and just guardrails, a framework for how you operate. And I'm not talking about necessarily like, though I do this, like, I get up at 4:45 every morning, I go for a run, I meditate, I kind of write a journal, plan my day out. I didn't do it. I ran today, but I didn't do that because I'm on vacation. But on most days, that's weekends kind of get away from us. But my day is always better when I get that 60-minute pocket from 5 to 6, right? I always feel like I'm more in the zone. And having that daily discipline just puts me in a good spot. The same thing about when I went into that first leadership role, I didn't have a framework for leadership. I didn't have a way to I didn't know, like, I need to sit down and have a conversation with my friends and say, hey, our relationship has changed and it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to expect this out of you. I just, didn't do anything. And so when we talk about, our group is really big about mentorship. And I think, these are the conversations we need to be having with our emerging leaders, young professionals, and people transitioning from military into security, to say, like, hey man, you're not going to have this structure like you did when you were in the Army. And so you got to create it in different ways. And
you have to become the disciplinarian. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. Of yourself, right? You don't have that first sergeant,
Exactly.
keeping you in line anymore. You're your own first sergeant now. You're your own captain, whatever. And at the same time, it's not like directorial discipline, leadership. And another great book by Jocko and Life is called The Dichotomy of Leadership, where they go through each one of the principles they talk about in executive or extreme ownership, and they talk about the balance. You can go too far in each direction. So you can go so disciplined that you're so rigid that people can't connect with you.
Yeah.
If you're so loose, then you end up like I was, where you're just nothing. So there you gotta, it's in the middle somewhere.
One of the, I think, key takeaways of your story, and a lot of people that may be watching this can really learn from, is we often think the younger we can get into a leadership position, the better, because we'll be a quick riser. But that's a lot of stress to put on a 20-some-year-old for a couple reasons. One, you don't know who you are. You are not secure within yourself. And that's a problem, right? The military, we were all in the military. The military does a great job in telling you exactly who you are at any given point in time, and they enforce that. So if you stand up and you say, hey guys, this is what we're doing, it's because that role and that authority and that persona has been given to you, and everybody recognizes that. But when you have to create it within yourself, and then we get another layer of complexity with the security industry that has not properly scoped out roles, has not provided proper management and leadership training, and generally goes about its business as, well, we tried to get lucky, because if something didn't happen, then it was a good day. And so you add the lack of role definement, the lack of management and leadership training and experience, and then you add the common theme of the security industry is, I just hope nothing happens. And you wonder why people feel like they only have one shot. Like, oh my gosh, if I blow this, I'm done. And that's not the truth. And you are right on it with John. Life is about learning. You will fall. You'll do small stumbles. You will do big flops. I mean, I have been in the place to where everything I went to build for a couple years just fell flat. And you're just like, okay, what are we going to do now? And you have to make that decision. Is this failure going to define me? Or am I going to reach out to the right people? Am I going to get the right guidance and help? Am I going to set up a support structure around myself so I can pull myself back up? And another key thing that you mentioned was ego. Ego is a big killer. We need to learn how to let that go, take our beatings, take our losses, and identify what we can learn to move forward.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing of just getting out of your own way, and it's the balance between confidence and ego. So now, because I have all this failure hay in the barn, I know I can overcome things. Me and my wife talk about this all the time. We joke that we have a propensity for creating the most challenging situations in our life, just so we can get through them. Right? It's like it's like we know we can do hard things, and it makes us stronger humans. It makes us a stronger couple. It makes us stronger parents. It makes me completely confident in the capability that I'm managing through a pandemic with 4 kids, homeschooling, through distance learning, and we do it. We overcome it. Angela Duckworth wrote that just phenomenal book called Grit. Right? I mean, that word I think it's been watered down over time as it's been kind of popularized and turned into more of kind of a buzz term. But you go back and read her scientific analysis of what that is, and it's doing the hard things over and over again and persevering and growing from them. So not just banging your head against the wall, but banging it once and then finding a way to go around it or over it or through it. And so that's what it really taught me, and it developed that muscle memory that I can do it. I can do this. And then I remember another defining moment as we would do quarterly business reviews around for our security organization, and I was briefing on it, and we had some issues with the security officers has had some sort of incident or issue or failure. They hadn't caught something, like you said, Tim, we didn't avoid the bad thing that day. So when leadership asked me what happened, John, and I told him, I said, that's on me. I need to make sure there's clarity around the process and they follow it. So I take full responsibility. They held me back after the meeting, and they commended me. They let the other leadership people go, and they held me back and said, we're really, we just want to acknowledge you for taking responsibility and taking ownership, because your peers aren't doing that right now. And little did I know that a few of those peers were on their way out, and I would reassume that higher leadership role, and that had a lot to do with it, in taking accountability and responsibility. And so, I think that, it means a lot. It's so you take these things and you kind of add them up together. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Know you're going to fail. And Lee, you and I have talked about this. It's something we're both really passionate about. Greatness happens just outside of your comfort zone. Go too far out of your comfort zone and you might get hurt, right? But you got to get outside to make anything.
When you talk about greatness, for me, I kind of equate it to the power and harnessing that power. And it's understanding when you have that power within inside you through that moment of failure. Mm-hmm. And everything is done when you get outside of the box, right? It's the leap of faith. And I talk to a lot of the young professionals that I mentor, and even the young professionals within my company. We talk all the time, and I push them towards failure. I said, I want you to fail, because right now it's like you're this amazing product, yet you think everything is sunshine and rainbows, right? And in retrospect, until you fail, that's only when you know when the real or where the real truth is, where the element of growth is. But you're so right, is that you've got to know where that fine balance is, right? Because if you go too far, then it can be super damaging. But even then, when you get to that damage point, it's how you learn from that, right? And again, it's you said about it, and it is so key. It's like you can make mistakes and you can you can fail, and we want you to fail. That's because we feel that is the best way to learn. But there's the key word. If you're not learning from those mistakes and those failings, then it's a pointless exercise. You're not following through the process, right? It's a bit like healing, right? When you go through, and I'm going to touch a bit on Tim of what he's just gone through, is that right now him and his family are going through a healing process, right? Which is very similar to the failure process.
Yeah. And let me give you an example of not learning and not healing. So I played lacrosse in college in my junior year. So I wasn't like a stellar player, but really hard worker. And between my freshman and sophomore year, worked my butt off, got in the starting lineup, and really became a leader on the team. Made captain my junior year, and I made it. I'm a captain. I'm a junior. This is great. So still, worked. I would say I leveled off, right? I didn't get better. And I let it all kind of go to my head, and it was college. So I was partying my face off, right? Because that's what you're supposed to do, right? I'm captain of the lacrosse team. Like, let's go, let's get loose. So that was the life I was living. And my coaches came to me before the season started, and they're like, John, you gotta pull it together. I'm like, man, don't talk to me about this, right? You guys weren't, because they weren't too much older than me. I was like, you guys were doing this just a couple years ago. Like, you understand. So I didn't do it. Didn't change. We had a good season. We didn't get as far as we wanted to. Turns out I lose my captainship. And it came and told me why, right? And I was like, okay, like, sucks, but I'm going to go back to work. I'm going to be the best supporter, because these captains were like my brothers. So the guys who got it instead of me, like, how am I going to be mad at them? So still, put in the work and did hard, but I didn't learn my lesson, because I didn't bring that lesson about just of like once you get there, not changing anything and really understanding what's around you and figuring out how to get better and getting complacent. So I didn't learn. And so I made that same mistake again. And I remember going back and having a conversation with my coaches who had become great mentors for mine, and with tears in my eyes saying, I'm sorry that I didn't listen to you. And they were like, what are you talking about? I was like, man, you gave me a chance. You tried to teach me that life lesson. And it took me 5 more years after you tried to teach it for me to really understand. And so I kind of committed to them right there. Like, I'm not going to, that isn't going to happen to me again. So I had a failure, didn't learn from it in a different context, many, 3-5 years later, make the same mistake again, but learn from it. And then through a moment of clarity, looked back and said, oh shit, I already made that mistake. And I could have avoided this.
Yep.
If I would have like really kind of broke that down and understood it. But I was a 22-year-old kid. It doesn't mean you can't do it at that age. That's a little bit of an excuse, but I didn't have the tool set there. And so I hope those who are watching this are really taking notes. And if you're Josh, I know he's taking notes.
Oh, definitely.
I know Josh is taking notes. I love Josh. But think about that. Talk to us about it, because I think any of us will break down these kind of opportunities for you, because you don't have to necessarily fail to learn. Yeah. Right? You can watch other people fail and learn from it too. Absolutely. And so you can actually fail 1,000,000 times and never have to really hurt yourself. And I think that's something we underestimate too, is learning through history and peer groups and other mentors to tell us, how they failed and how we can learn from that.
That's actually key. And I have tons of stories about that. But I want to wrap up with one last question. I just want to hear your take on this. But do you remember when or what experience you had when you realized that you did not have to have all the answers? Because I think that's key to being secure within yourself.
I think it was within that same role later on. Once I got back up into that leadership role, when I learned, I would say it was really crystallized. I remember it well, actually, now. When I first took over, when I was with the aerospace company, and I took over the international trade department, I didn't know it very well. And I was really worried, about being a fraud, right? And we can do a whole nother conversation on kind of the fraud complex. And I finally had to get comfortable with, I don't know all the details around that answer, but I have a team of experts that do, and I'm going to get right back to you. My job is to lead a group of experts and surround me with people who are better than I am at the things I'm not good at. And that was a real breakthrough leadership moment for me. Little taste of it in that other role as I kind of got more comfortable with saying, I don't know the answer, but I'm gonna go look for it. And then as I grew, it was more of, I don't need to know the answer because I have a team of people that do know the answer. And I think those are different. And maybe at different times in your career, those are different moments that may facilitate through your growth.
Yeah, one of the best learning experiences I had was my first career as a paramedic. And you have to learn the emergency protocols. You have to know specific things that you need to have on hand to save a life right now. But when you work around a doctor, they know those things too. And the rest, they're like, you know what? I'm going to go look at this book. I'm going to go look this up online and figure out what these symptoms actually mean. And that, even before I got into security, taught me there's certain key tools you need to have on hand to deploy immediately to stop bleeding, to support the life support of a program or whatever it is that you're doing to support a good security response. But everything else, take your time, figure out what information is out there and bring the best solutions back to the table in your own time.
Yeah, that's super key. I just want to say this quick. Think about this, is that we often get asked by young professionals, how do we take that next step to management, right? What courses, what degree, what certification, what program do I need to follow? in retrospect, a lot of times they're not looking at the challenge in the correct way, right? What we're talking about here, right? The wisdom, the experience, the emotional intelligence, the leadership element, how you communicate a challenge, and then how you then communicate that within the team that you work. In retrospect, and I believe that is what takes you to the managerial step, not all of the certifications.
Agreed. I have them, and I still promote people to get them because the acquisition of knowledge through them is positive.
Absolutely.
However, the experiences and then the ability to articulate, and again, I think to your point, Tim, like once you know what you need to stop the bleeding, that only comes through actually stopping the bleeding, right? You have to do the field work, at least a little bit.
Seeing that blood, what do I need to do? How do I need to stem the flow, right?
Right. And not for 20 years, right? I mean, do it a few times. And so, it's like, put yourself in the position, again, get uncomfortable, put yourself in the role where you probably mess it up a few times, and then you know how to do it. Then you build up that confidence and muscle memory, and now you have the experience, and then those are building blocks, for you to move forward with.
All right. That's this session of GSD Fails. And I'll leave you with this. If you want to conquer failure, conquer yourself and your own insecurity.